What is going on, everyone? With patch 6.1 right around the corner, I wanted to go over all of the class changes and talent balances to obviously all the classes coming in patch 6.1. Now there's a lot of stuff to go over, so hopefully you guys can be entertained for the entire time going over all of these changes, which is a lot of changes. Starting off with the Death Knight. Now the Death Knight is gaining not too many changes to their talents. Starting with Breath of Sindragosa, no longer uses or has an initial runic power cost. Also, Death Siphon now heals the Death Knight for 400% of the damage dealt, which is up from 335%. And now that, because that scales with, I believe, 60% of your AP, that can definitely heal for a good amount of damage you dealt. As if Death Knights didn't already heal for a lot. Necrotic Plague, now damage has been increased by 37%, so there's another buff for them. Moving on to the Druids. Bristling Fur now has a 30-second cooldown, which it used to be a 1-minute cooldown. Force of Nature treants have been buffed with a 35% increase to their health and spell power, and an 80% increase to their armor and attack power. Guardian of Elune now also reduces the rage cost of Savage Defense by the Druid's base dodge chance percentage. I'm sorry. Moment of Clarity now lasts 7 seconds. It used to be 5 seconds. Rampant Growth now also increases the healing of Swift Men by 20%. Renewal now instantly heals for 30% of max health, which used to be 22%. And Stellar Flare damage has been increased by 16% and now has a duration of 24 seconds, which used to be 20 seconds. So overall, pretty nothing too crazy for the Druids. Moving on to the Hunters, Barrage damage has been increased by 21%. Exhilaration now instantly heals for 30% of max health, up from 22%. Glaive Toss damage has been increased by 25%. Power Shot damage has been increased by 62%, and Stampede now lasts for 40 seconds, which it was up from 20 seconds. Moving on to the Mages, Alter Time now has a 1-minute cooldown. It is down from a 1.5-minute cooldown. So that's that. Mirror Image copies of Frost Mages now deals 15% less damage with Frostbolt. So a bit of a nerf, but it's just Mirror Image. Not too bad. Moving on to the Monks. Ascension now increases Spirit by 10% instead of increasing maximum mana by 20%. Breath of the Serpent healing increased by 50%. Chi Burst has been increased by damage has been increased by 51%. Chi Explosion healing while in Serpent stance is increased by 40% and is now usable while channeling Soothing Mist. Chi Torpedo damage has been increased by 150% and healing has been increased by 42%. Hurricane Strike damage increased by 25%. Ring of Peace now incapacitates all enemies for 5 seconds, which is up from 3 seconds. And last but not least, Zen Sphere has been improved. Its detonation damage has been increased by 97%, and the healing has been increased by 70%, but the periodic healing has been reduced by 39%. So overall for the Monks, pretty much buffs all around besides the last periodic healing for Zen Sphere. Moving on to the Paladins, Empowered Seals have been improved. The Leodrin's Righteousness now increased haste by 20%, which is up from 15%. Uther's Insight now heals the Paladin for 2% of maximum health, which was up from 1%, so that's a pretty good buff right there. Execution Sentence healing dealt by Stay of Execution has been increased by 100%. Final Verdict now increases the radius of the next Divine Storm by 50%, which is down from 100%, excuse me. So that's kind of a bummer. But Hand of Purity now reduces damage taken by 15%, which is up from 10%, so that's good. Sacred Shield, mana cost now has been reduced by 34%. Obviously, me being a Paladin, kind of happy the first two. Not too happy about the Final Verdict, but what are you gonna do? Moving on to the Priest. Auspicious spirits no longer cause shadowy apparitions to not deal damage. Instead, it now increases shadowy apparition damage by 100%, in addition to still granting 1 shadow orb. Clarity of purposes healing has been increased by 20%. Divine Star damage increased by 20%. Mindbender lasts for 20 seconds, which is up from 15 seconds. Saving Grace, now how healing has been increased by 50%, and it also reduces future healing dealt by 15%, which is up from 10%. Also, the talent is now instant, but its effectiveness is reduced while you are in PvP, so not sure how much it's reduced, but that's what it says. Surge of Darkness now has a 12% chance to trigger, that's up from 10%. Void Entropy damage has been increased by 80%. Void Tendril's health has been increased by 30%. So overall, not too shabby. Rogue talents, the Burst of Speed now has a 3-second cooldown. Death from Above's damage has been increased by 25%. Now for Assassination Rogues, the talent also increases the duration of Envenom. And last but not least, Leeching Poison has been redesigned, so it now grants 10% leech while active, and it no longer applies a poison effect to the target. Its Shiv effect remains unchanged. Moving on to the Shamans. Ancestral Guidance now triggers from all damage or healing dealt, including multi-strikes, instead of only direct damage or healing. Storm Elemental Totem damage and healing has been increased by 30%. Warlocks. Cataclysm now also applies Unstable Affliction for Affliction Warlocks. Charred Remains now reduces Incinerate damage by only 50%, which is down from reducing the Incinerate damage by 60%. Grimoire of Sacrifice now increases damage of effective spells by 25%, which is up from 20%. And Grimoire of Service now summons a second demon for 25 seconds, which is up from 20 seconds. Kil'jaeden's Cunning now has a 35-second cooldown, which it used to be a 1-minute cooldown. And moving on to the last class talent change, or balance rather, the Warrior. Avatar now lasts 20 seconds with a 1.5-minute cooldown, which is up from lasting 24 seconds with a 3-minute cooldown. So that's pretty crazy. Second Wind now increases Leech by 25%, which it used to be up from 10%. Siegebreaker damage and knockback distance hasn't increased by 50%, and lastly, Slam damage has been increased by 43%. So we got some buffs there. Now we're moving on to the overall class changes. Starting off with the Death Knight. The Glyph of Runic Power now generates 2 Runic Power every second for 5 seconds when struck by a movement impairing effect, which is down from 3. So a little bit of a nerf. Moving on to the Druid. Healing Touch no longer heals for 50% more when cast on self for Balanced Druids. Now for Balanced Druids, they now learn a new passive ability at 38, which is Nature's Bounty. Nature's Bounty causes Healing Touch to be critical strikes for 8 seconds after killing an enemy that yields Experience of Honor. Starfall and Sunfall now only hit targets affected by Moonfire or Sunfire by default. Moving on to Restoration. Genesis now affects all targets within 60 yards of the Druid and no longer requires a target. And Nature's Cure is now classified as a Nature School ability. Now moving on to Hunters. Trap Mastery no longer reduces the cooldown of all traps and Black Arrow by 6 seconds. Black Arrow now has a cooldown of 24 seconds, which is down from 30 seconds. And Enhanced Traps now reduces the cooldown of all traps by 33%, which was down by 50%. Now for the pets for Hunters, Basilisks now have a pet family ability. Stone Scales reduce damage taken by the pet. Previously, Basilisk did not have a pet family ability. Hydra, pets should no longer be excessively large. And the Spirit Beast Blessing now also provides a 5% increase to critical strike chance, and it does not stack with other critical strike chance buffs. Now moving on to the mages. For arcanes, Presence of Mind can now be applied to polymorph spells. For fire, Fireball now replaces Frostfire Bolt for fire mages. And for frost, Deep Freeze Stun effect now always breaks on damage from Ice Lance, but no longer has a chance to break from other damage sources. Now for the talents, Blast Wave now has a 3-second cooldown. Ice Nova and Supernova also have a 3-second cooldown. Now moving on to the monks. For Brewmaster, Elusive Brew is now highlighted when the monk has 15 stacks of it. For Mistweaver, Manatee now restores mana equal to 3 times the monk's unbuffed spirit instead of the 4% of maximum mana. Moving on to Paladins. For Protection, Seal of Truth is no longer available for Protection Paladins. Seal of Command is now replaced by Seal of Righteousness instead of Seal of Truth. Now for the talents, Beacon of Insight now increases healing received by the target by 40%, which used to be 30%, and moves to the next most injured ally when the target reaches 90% health instead of full health. So, moving on to Priest. Chakra. Chastise now increases damage done by Shadow and Holy Spells by 80%, which is up from 50%. Now for the talents, Cascade may now hit the same target twice, resulting in an increase to total healing. To compensate, Cascade healing now has been reduced by 35%. However, the total healing in a 20-player raid will still be slightly higher than before. Insanity now also affects Mindseer. Now for the Shaman's Elemental, Enhanced Chain Lightning now increases the damage done by the next Earthquake by 300% when Chain Lightning or Lava Beam strikes 3 or more targets, instead of increasing Earthquake damage by 60% for each target struck. Now for Enhancement, Maelstrom Weapon no longer reduces the mana cost of spells, and for the talents, Echo of the Elements has been redesigned. So it now causes Earthquake, Fire Nova, Lava Burst, Lava Lash, Riptide, Spirit Link Totem, Storm Strike, and Unleashed Life to have 2 charges, and the other abilities that reset the cooldown on these abilities will now instead grant only 1 charge. Oh, that was a mouthful. Now moving on to the Warrior. Last one. Thunderclap now has a snare effect that now lasts for 10 seconds or 8 seconds while you're in PvP, which is up from 6 seconds. So a bit of a nerf. A bit of a buff. I don't know why I said nerf. Bit of a buff. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. That was a lot to go over, and I know you may not have wanted to watch all of it, but thank you for watching. And if you guys did, always help leave a like, spread the word, and let me know what you guys think about these changes, what class you guys have been playing, if you like some of the changes, if you hate them, you know, biasism, whatever it is. If you're biased, let me know in the comment section below, and hopefully you guys will see you in the next one.